I am. Okay, welcome everyone to our Tuesday, February 24th, 6 p.m. work session. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Our agenda for our work session is first to do a legislative update with Senator Todd Weiler. I don't see him here yet, and he may be still coming from the committee hearings that are taking place at the state capitol. So I'm going to reverse the order of our work session agenda and ask our city attorney, Brad Jepson, to do our open and public meeting training for us while we check to see if Senator Weiler is en route.
Okay. Give me a minute. It is not. Unfortunately, it's going to be very similar to what we did last year. Hold on 1 second. It's going to be very similar to what we did last year with a video from the state auditor's office, and then basically the same examples. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but luckily we have had no new catastrophes in the Open Meetings Act for the last year to talk about. So now we can hook up. Sorry, Mayor, I thought I had a minute to get ready, but we'll have it coming up here in 1 second. Okay, everybody has been through this before except maybe Dan, but the state does mandate every year you guys receive an open meetings training from the state auditor's office. So how this will proceed. I'm ready when you are. There we are. How this proceeds, we'll watch a video. It's about 7 minutes long from the state auditor's office. This will get us all of our check marks off of our list of things we need to talk about. Then we'll talk about the 2 or 3 issues that have come up in the state over the last few years with this. Only one new one. And yes, we'll begin with the video.
So what is the Open and Public Meetings Act? It's the state law that ensures government actions and deliberations are openly conducted. Before we continue, keep in mind that this video is an overview and exceptions may exist based on your entity type. We focus on local government, not state requirements. When in doubt, read the law and consult with your legal counsel. So what's considered an open and public meeting? It's when a public body quorum, also known as a simple majority, meets to discuss or act upon government business. It includes the meetings sometimes referred to as workshops or executive sessions. Regular meetings, public hearings, electronic meetings, and emergency meetings are all open and public meetings. Open and public meetings don't include chance or social meetings. A public hearing is a type of open and public meeting where citizens have a reasonable opportunity to speak. Public hearings happen when a government adopts a budget, imposes or increases taxes or fees, or transfers money from an enterprise fund. These meetings have extra notice and posting requirements and won't be addressed in this video. An electronic meeting is a type of open and public meeting that's convened electronically, such as via phone or the internet. Remember, the governing body must adopt a resolution, rule, or ordinance allowing and governing electronic meetings. OPMA adds additional requirements too. An emergency meeting may be held to discuss an urgent matter due to unforeseen circumstances. In order to hold the meeting, the best notice that's feasible is provided of the time, location, and topics to be considered. An attempt is made to contact all governing body members, and a governing body majority approves the meeting. An open and public meeting may be closed to discuss any of the following: a person's character, competence, or health, collective bargaining, litigation, certain real property transactions, including any form of a water right or water shares, with specific restrictions, security personnel, devices, or systems deployment, investigations of criminal misconduct, and private or protected information per the Utah Procurement Code, including trade secrets. A closed meeting may be held only if a quorum is present and the meeting was properly noticed. 2/3 of the governing body present at the meeting need to vote yes to close a meeting. Quick math lesson. 2 divided by 3 equals 66.7%. Let's say your governing body has 5 members present at the meeting. If 3 out of 5 members vote yes, that equals 60%, which is not equal or greater than 66.7%, which means you're 1 member short and would need 4 out of 5 members to vote yes. During a closed meeting, a governing body can't interview someone applying to fill an elected position, discuss filling a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, discuss the character, competence, or health of a person whose name was submitted for consideration to fill a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, approve any ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, contract, or appointment, or take a vote, unless it's a vote on a motion to end the closed portion of the meeting and return to an open meeting. When a governing body closes a meeting, the following must be publicly announced and entered into the minutes of the open meeting at which the closed meeting was approved. The reason or reasons for holding the closed meeting, the location where the closed meeting will be held, and the vote of each member of the governing body either for or against the motion to close the meeting. If a closed meeting is discussing a person's character, competence, or health, or security personnel, devices, or systems deployment, or several other exceptions, mostly related to state bodies or project entities, no recording or minutes are required. However, the presiding member needs to sign a sworn written statement stating such. If the closed meeting is held for any other reason, a recording must be made, which includes date, time, and place of the meeting, names of members present and absent, and names of all others, except where disclosure would infringe on the confidentiality necessary to fulfill the original purpose of closing the meeting. Regular open and public meetings require 24 hours notice. The public notice includes the meeting, agenda, date, time, and place. Public meeting agendas need to include reasonably specified topics to be considered, with each topic listed under a separate agenda item on the meeting agenda. The governing body may not consider a topic in an open meeting that wasn't on the agenda. If a new topic not on the agenda is raised by the public during an open meeting, the governing body may discuss the topic. However, final action may not be taken on the new topic during that meeting. Additionally, entities holding regular meetings scheduled in advance over the course of the year need to provide annual notice of the entire year's meeting schedule. The notice must include date, time, and place for each meeting.
Notice is posted on the public body's website, in a public location such as the location where the meeting will be held, and on Utah's public notice website in accordance with Utah Code 63G-30-102.
Typically, posting on the public notice website is done by the records officer, recorder, or clerk. However, it's the governing body's responsibility to ensure notice is provided. State Archives has prepared a training manual and quick guide for owners and posters, as well as training videos that can be accessed at their website, archives.utah.gov. Written minutes and a recording are kept of all open meetings, with few exceptions. Written minutes include the date, time, and place of the meeting, the names of members present and absent, the substance of all matters, names of citizens providing comments, the substance of the comments provided, any information a body member requests be entered into the minutes or recording, and a record by individual member of each vote taken. A body with elected members must record each vote in list format by category for each action taken by a member, including yes votes, no votes, and absent members next to each member's name. A recording must be a complete and unedited record of all open portions of the meeting from beginning to end, and be labeled with the meeting date, time, and place. All or any part of an open meeting may be independently recorded by any person in attendance if the recording does not interfere with the conduct of the meeting. Pending minutes means written minutes of an open meeting in draft form subject to change before being approved by the public body that held the open meeting. Pending minutes must contain a clear indication, such as a draft or pending watermark, that the governing body hasn't yet approved the minutes and that the minutes are subject to change until the public body approves them. Approved minutes means written minutes of an open meeting approved by the public body that held the open meeting. Entities must establish and implement procedures for the public body's approval of written minutes. Public meeting pending minutes, approved minutes, and recordings are public records under GRAMA. Any individual who publicly presents information relating to an item on the public body's meeting agenda must provide a copy of the information for inclusion in the public record. Make pending minutes available to the public within 30 days. Within 3 business days after approving written minutes of an open meeting, make approved minutes and any public materials available at the Utah Public Notice website, the entity's primary office, and the entity's website. Within 3 business days after holding an open meeting, make an audio recording of the open meeting available to the public for listening.
All right. So that's what the state auditor mandates we have. We can all sign our permit, we'll create an affidavit that you've had the training. We are going to go over some highlights though. So we talked about open meetings. What is an open meeting? Well, we kind of know all this, but I did highlight receiving comment on. If we have a meeting for the purpose of receiving comment and we have a quorum present, that can be a public meeting. This came up a couple times during campaign season as some of you guys were campaigning together. Does it become a public meeting if you guys join together and you guys have a quorum present and are taking public comment on issues facing the city? It can, and we need to be aware of that. Not this year, but we need to be aware of that moving forward. So even if we are not necessarily discussing them or taking a vote on them, if we're receiving comment from the public, a quorum is present, that would constitute a meeting. We'll talk about this a little bit later. I do have a couple slides I want to talk about text messages, but generally this does not include text messages. I've told you guys last year, please don't text each other during a meeting about items we're discussing during a meeting. That violates the idea of the Open Meetings Act. So this case, we talked about it last year. It's one of the few we have, and it applies more to county commissioners where you have two people becomes a quorum. And you had these 2 county commissioners down in San Juan County who were meeting with not the county attorney, but with their own attorney they had hired to basically decide what they were going to do, how they were going to do it. And eventually they were audited. They were found they were in violation. They gave them a warning, nothing else. But that's probably the most egregious one we've had in the state in recent years. Now we do have these closed meetings. We've been very specific about these closed meetings. We know the reasons why we have a closed meeting. Our notices for our meetings, we've kind of been over. So let's talk about these closed meetings. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of reasons. The ones that really apply to us end up being competency, litigation, and buying property. To have a closed meeting, we have to have 2 of the 3. They did the math for us. A 5-member council, everybody's present. That generally means we're going to have 4 votes. We do a roll call vote, and we put down everybody's name, and we record the closed meetings in almost every case. Remember from last year, this North Logan City case. It was kind of a fun case for gossip, but not as much for the Open Meetings Act. Essentially, what they had happen is they had a former planning commission member and a Cache County assessor who owned that little tiny piece of land that was blocking access to that big piece of land that they wanted to develop. Neither of them wanted to sell it or to have it developed. Eventually, the commission in closed meeting decided that they were going to take it via eminent domain, and those 2 sued to get the recording of those closed meetings. The court found that there were 3 problems with this closed meeting and ultimately released all the records of this closed meeting. Number 1, the sessions were noticed on the agenda as executive session, and the court said that's not good enough. It has to be a closed session. Executive session could mean a lot of things. Problem number 2, the agenda didn't state the location of the executive session, and the motion for the executive session not specify the location. Problem number 3, motion failed to announce the reason for the closed session. In this case, it was real estate. And number 4, they failed to announce the vote of each member to go into the closed session. Essentially, they were very informal when they went into a closed session. All those recordings were released as if it had been an open meeting. Okay, the only one we have from last year, many of you guys might remember this. This is our state auditor. The state got into a little bit of a fight, and they decided to relocate her office outside of the state capitol. They didn't, prior to the meeting that they decided this on, it wasn't really noticed on the agenda that this would be up for a vote. And so ultimately, she filed a lawsuit, and the remedy was, well, they basically did it all over again. Not the most exciting case, but it's the only one we have from this year. So our agendas have to be specific if we are going to take action on that item, not just that it's going to be discussed. Okay, so this is kind of the conversation that we're having across the state. Now keep in mind, we have no state case on this. We're calling these walking quorums and serial communications. Better conversation would probably be a text thread. Now, the catch-all under the statute says that we cannot, as a public body, use electronic communication to conduct a meeting or to circumvent the Open Public Meetings Act. What does this mean? Well, it means you guys could have a quorum if you guys are discussing topics to the city via a text message that a quorum is on, or serial communications if you were to, call each other one after another and say, what are we voting on Wednesday? What are you going to vote? What are you going to vote? And we basically have the discussion behind closed doors. Now, the only case, well, not the only one, but the case that most states are going off of is this case out of, oh, by the way, thank you, Millie.
You saved us.
Standing up.
In this text thread, am I suggesting that we sell the city hall?
Yes, I don't know why it cut you off in the comments, but that was your, well, not yours. This is not, those aren't pictures of you. These are mythical people. No, it is not. Like I said, these are mythical people.
Could you, concerning that paragraph on the bottom there,
Yes.
clarify the last phrase for me, please? Or just the whole paragraph? Does that mean that if we meet one or two?
Oh, yes. So this is this idea of serial communication. Now, keep in mind, guys, as we saw with the state auditor case, the remedy is the action is void, and we have to have it again and have the discussions again, and we have to have the conversation again. I mean, there can be other consequences, and the biggest consequences with this would be that our text messages aren't grammable but become subpoenaable, which is not the best situation for us to be in. But yes, this is this idea of serial communications, meaning if the intent of your communications is to circumvent the Open Meetings Act, so if Richard wants to know how everybody is going to vote tonight on approval of buying capacitors, and you called Matt, then you called Beth, then you called Millie, then you called Dan, and you said, well, Matt's going to vote no. What are you going to vote? That would be an idea of we essentially use this phone tree, serial communications, to circumvent the Open Meetings Act and to discuss it behind closed doors and not in front of the public. Now, visiting with one other or two other council members about it, getting the ideas, we're not getting to this. But if it's clearly an intent of I want to know how everybody's going to vote, I'm going to discuss this through this phone chain, we're probably getting to where we're trying to circumvent the Open Meetings Act.
Thanks.
Okay, the case we have out of this is out of San Antonio. Members of San Antonio Council exchange, first of all, Texas has very similar Open Meetings Act to ours, very similar. Members of San Antonio City exchanged a series of emails regarding a public matter. They all or at least a quorum participated in it. They gave their opinions. They gave all those deliberations. No public notice, wasn't an open meeting. The court found that they did engage in this, violated the Open Meetings Act, and essentially that decision was void, and they had to go through it again. So like I said, not the biggest consequences. The biggest issue we run into is transparency and trust with the public when we're making decisions behind closed doors. All right, any questions? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. for that update, and thank you for the entertaining text message example. So we have had an update from Senator Weiler. He was stuck presenting a bill, and so he is hoping to be on his way shortly, but that does mean that he may not make it in time for our work session. So perhaps we will allow him an opportunity to give us an update during our public comment time if he arrives in time. Gary, since we had him scheduled for a legislative update, I'm wondering if perhaps we want to use some of this time to just give an update on some of the issues that we've been working on up at the state capitol with the League of Cities and Towns and the Legislative Policy Committee.
You bet. I'll need some help from the other members of the Legislative Policy Committee to get where we need to go. There are several land use bills as normal up there that have been of concern. The general tenor is an idea of trying to create more affordable housing. Although many of the solutions that are presented don't actually do that, there's no requirement for affordability. What they generally do, though, is take away the ability of local government, city councils, to make certain decisions. One of those is HB 184, which was by Ray Ward, our representative, and that bill proposed to create a state preferred land use, which would basically entitle anyone in a residential zone to have a lot of a certain size if they agreed, if that's what they wanted to build on it, regardless of what local zoning was. It also created what would you say, an expedited process that also was outside of local ordinances and only required the individual basically to submit a sketch of what they wanted to build. So there were a lot of problematic parts with it. It is following a national trend of a feeling that local governments are the problem for affordable housing. But the bill, as I mentioned, there was no requirement with those homes that they be affordable. There's no requirement that about profits or anything like that. And so it was pretty problematic. It went to committee 2 different times. Mayor Bradshaw had the pleasure of testifying and sharing the cities and the League of Cities and Towns point of view, and did a great job of explaining why it was concerning. We're hopeful that in the future we can find some common ground with Representative Ward or anybody else that wants to run legislation that would affect our ability to sort of determine what our community looks like and move forward in those cases. So that was a big one that has taken a considerable amount of time. Another one that we've been working on, it relates to property tax. There's also a kind of a national movement to do away with property tax or to make it really hard. And we've seen initiatives started at the Capitol this year, everything that would require voter approval of any property tax increase to a cap on how much a community could increase their property tax. And some of these seem maybe not harmless, but if you consider a 5% cap and you're a small city and you need to hire a police officer, let's say your general fund budget's $2 million, and your property tax revenue is around, $200,000, you're not going to be able to generate enough money to hire a new police officer. So things like that are problematic. But we've been working with Representative Karen Peterson out of Clinton to try and come up with a bill that provides a little more, what I would say, transparency and information earlier in the process about what a property tax, if a taxing entity intends to go through truth in taxation, it would provide information earlier in the process about what that tax would be used for, kind of at the department level, and what the impacts would be if it's not approved. And we're still working through language, but she's been great to try and accommodate the thoughts of the cities while also trying to fend off some of the more punitive property tax bills that are out there. The biggest challenge, of course, is that most of the people who are, well, I would say all of the people who are running legislation have never been in local government. State, of course, doesn't have property tax. So I'm just not sure they understand how local finances work. And there's no conversation about if property tax gets capped or goes away, how additional revenue would be made up. I suppose it would be a cut in services entirely, or it would be an increase in sales tax or some other regressive tax. Anyway, pretty problematic. It's hard to have a conversation in 40 days where you're talking about something that's fairly complex, and that's been a challenge. But we're optimistic that with Representative Peterson, we can get something that passes that preserves local autonomy while also meeting some of the goals of people to make truth in taxation and property tax increases a little more, I guess, transparent. And I think it's the object of many to just simply make it harder.
I'll maybe highlight a few that I have been working on with the League of Cities and Towns. First, just before I left the state capitol to come to our council meeting, Representative Paul Cutler was presenting his e-mobility bill, which deals with e-motorcycles and e-bikes and creating clear definitions, creating a training course for certain higher speed vehicles. He played the video that we showed in our council meeting 2 months ago of the person on a motorcycle that was on the road, then on the sidewalk, and then made that dangerous left turn against the light onto Highway 89 at 2600 South. That bill passed unanimously out of committee, so it's got one more vote on the Senate floor. Representative Cutler has worked really hard with cities, with law enforcement, with entities like Green Bike and others to find something that will help improve safety, give us some different tools for regulation on the roadway. So a big thanks to him for taking on this issue and working through it with so many parties. I did want to highlight, Gary mentioned a housing bill that we haven't been supportive of. I wanted to highlight Representative Roberts has been working on a fairly significant bill to free up revenue source for infrastructure. There's 190 some odd thousand entitled units across the Wasatch Front, and many of those are held up by not having significant infrastructure, sewer lift stations, water tanks, things of that nature that would unlock lots of potential housing units to help have housing for all of our kids and grandkids that are seeking that type of housing. So he's created an infrastructure partnership program to help unlock a lot of that housing. So some of the bills that we're dealing with are perhaps aimed at very small kind of one-off land use anecdotal stories, and some are aimed at solving larger significant problems that would unlock a lot of housing, and that's where the efforts have tried to be focused. So thanks to Representative Cal Roberts for that bill. Before serving legislature, he served on the Draper City Council, so he has been helpful at that intersection of local land use and then what the state can do to partnership, not preemption, being the goal there. Senator Harper is working on a fairly significant bill that would change UTA's governance from the 3-commission model back to a 7-member board in how that is governed. The League of Cities and Towns is working to make sure that we have local representation. This is our local joint action agency to help do public transit, and making sure that they maintain that local connection, especially because the majority of the funding for UTA comes from local governments, has been a priority. That bill is still playing out with the remaining 6 working days of legislative session, so stay tuned. And then finally, the other one that came to mind is Representative Elison just numbered a fairly significant bill dealing with homelessness. The part that would be really relevant to us involves the mitigation fund. There's impacts to cities that host shelters in the bill. As a city that doesn't host a shelter, we are a contributor to the mitigation fund, and it would include a significant 15% increase for those non-shelter cities to contribute to the mitigation fund. And the challenge is that the state is in a bit of a limbo in terms of our planning on homelessness. The prior homelessness director, Wayne Niederhauser, left his position at the end of the year. The new director, Tyler Clancy, is currently a state legislator. He's not going to be formally taking up that position until the session ends. So we have a bill to direct funding and for the shelter cities to impact, in particular, their conditional use permits and the number of people that can be in a shelter, but doing it kind of without an overall goal of whether we're having a campus, a centralized campus, or we're not having a central campus. So those are a few of the bills that are kind of high on the radar for the League of Cities and Towns as we play out those final 6 days. I don't know if Beth and Richard, who also serve as our representatives to the legislative policy committees, have any bills that have been kind of high on their radars to share with the group.
Mostly just the ones that you've mentioned, Mayor, and that Gary talked about. I would like to hear what the differences are of this new homeless services bill from the previous bill that had been considered. Or is it an amendment? Is it a substitution?
The bill that is currently public and numbered is the one that we talked about on Monday in the League's Legislative Policy Committee. So that bridge concept
Right.
has not yet been introduced as a substitute or an amendment. So we're still dealing with the bill on its original introduction. So it does include that 15% increase in the mitigation fund for non-shelter cities, and then the permanent flex, essentially is what they're calling it, for the shelter cities. It also includes Code Red, which will probably mostly impact our friends in southern Utah. Code Red is a high temperature at which you're required to provide shelter, in contrast to Code Blue, which is when it's very cold.
Also adjusted the Code Blue temperature up or down somewhat.
Yes.
No, up somewhat.
Up
Thank
from
you.
18, I think, to 25 degrees. Yeah.
Mayor, are you comfortable that municipalities are still going to have a seat at the table if we proceed under this bridge concept and wait for the new director to take his place? Are you comfortable that the cities are still going to have a say on how things proceed subsequent to that?
So one of the components of the bill is currently drafted and that I think would continue in any substitutes is a more formal work group to figure out what items are eligible for a city with a shelter to apply for mitigation funds and to receive those. There is some differences in how the various shelter cities are counting beds and asking for resources. So the work group would require both non-shelter cities and cities with a shelter to participate.
Right.
However, I would feel more comfortable if we're going to be asked to contribute additional funds, if there were a more formal long-term plan in place. Being asked to increase your contributions by 15% and then face potentially a second request for funding to come in a future year is a significant ask. I believe that when I asked Tyson to help make sure I had the numbers, I believe that we are contributing roughly $175,000 right now as a city to the mitigation fund. So an increase takes us up to nearly $200,000 in contributions to the mitigation fund, which is significant for us. That is potentially an FTE for a police officer minus a car and equipment to go with that officer. That's just so it's a significant contribution. I would feel better if we, frankly, had a firm plan that a new homeless director and our state legislature and the governor had all, brought forward with stakeholders in order to make sure that we're being efficient in our resources, because we don't have unlimited resources, even though I do want to note that the burden the shelter cities have is a significant one that some of our sister cities are having. And they don't, of course, run and operate the shelters. That happens at the county level. And so I do think there's things that the counties also should be doing and ought to be required to be doing.
Could I impose on you, Mayor, to opine just a little further on the potential water rate proposal that's before the legislature now?
Yeah, so that bill is HB 501. That bill has changed significantly from its original introduction, where I think its concern level and its pass-through of very significant water rate increases to residents would have been significant. There was a new substitute bill that was shared this morning that removed the bulk of those concerns of a forced, essentially, rate increase. It still is encouraging that if you as a city want to apply for into a revolving infrastructure loan fund, that you'll need to hit certain rates based on your median adjusted gross income. But it became significantly less bad this morning.
Okay, that's good news.
For those that don't know, the original bill, and you guys may have to help me, the original bill, the idea was that there would be every community eventually would need to assess their residents a fee. For Bountiful, we did the math, and it would have been about $20 million a year, which is only a quarter of our total budget for the entire city. We would have contributed that money to a state fund, and then communities could apply for that money to fix their water infrastructure problems. So for those communities that are doing a good job of maintaining their systems, we would basically be asking our residents to fund other people's water systems.
And I think when we did the math on that, that it was $20 million as a city, and then you reverse engineered it with about the 13,000 connections we have in the city, ended up being pretty significant, about a $1,500 increase per connection, in order to have the kind of the privilege of potentially being able to then apply for a grant. So at introduction, that bill was very, very, very troubling. Through
can
the
I ask a
legislative
question?
process, it's gotten better. The process is designed to take off rough edges, and it had some rough ones.
So mine's vastly superior to mine, may understand how this continues on. But if the idea was to set up a fund and force us to set confiscatory rates to provide those funds, and now those funds are going to stay with the city, and they aren't going to be used by the state to provide these grants, why is this bill still even a thing?
This is an interesting policy debate that has played out for years up at the state capitol.
Okay.
So there's been an overall theme that in the state of Utah, in a desert state like Utah, we need to treat water as the scarce resource it is, and we ought to charge rates to help people understand the scarce resource that it is. And that perhaps there's been some push and pull over the years by different groups and different studies that in particular, we as cities are not charging enough for water to demonstrate how important the resource is, and so therefore we're not being frugal with the resource.
Okay.
And so it's part of some of that push and pull overall that water needs to be more expensive, so we're more thoughtful about it. There are also some studies that have come out from both the clean water side and the dirty water side about significant projects coming up on the horizon that'll be many millions to upgrade sewer systems or upgrade various water tanks, and those are on our horizon and out there in these studies, and so we should be preparing for those. The bill as it currently sits doesn't, force us to raise rates and force us to then send it. But in order to be eligible down the line, they want to see that you have been willing to raise your rates and show a willingness to engage in that system. I don't know, Gary, if you have additional thoughts from your time spent up at the Capitol as well.
Filtered or unfiltered?
Well, relating to water.
The unfiltered version.
Give us the secondary unfiltered water version.
There is a lot of pressure frequently, once you introduce a bill, to support you and amend it to a place where it's not harmful, but you still get to say you passed a bill. That happens fairly regularly up there, and I don't know, that's the unfiltered commentary on that. I don't know where this bill falls in that category, but it's a pretty common thing.
Well, I'd like to point out how many bills have come up this year. Record number. What is it as of today? Do you know?
I can tell you what it was as of Monday. As of Monday, the legislature had requested over 1,400 bills, and just over 900 had been numbered. Today, the House numbered HB 598. I've never seen an HB 600, but I think it's possible.
We might make it.
We might make it. So they have a record number of bills that have been requested, a record number of bills that have been numbered, yet a small number of bills that have been passed, which will make the next 6 days when the majority of legislative bills see action. So it'll be a lot of important policy discussions and issues that move through in the next 6 business days by next Friday at midnight.
Wow. This is my first real jump in this pool, and I have been amazed at the number of bills that come forward, but also the incredible work that our mayor and that Gary does. Amen. And it's been amazing to see them jump into action to put out these fires that would be really bad and expensive for Bountiful in particular, is my interest, but all cities, and how they've called on Tyson to give us information and run the numbers for our city, and then that's shared with legislators. And Brad, same thing. Give us information. How would this affect the city? What does this look like? Give us some examples. And I don't know if Bountiful is always this amazing, or if part of this is due to your role in the League of Cities and Towns, but Bountiful is holding the line for cities, and I am so very impressed with the work that you do, Mayor, and Gary in particular. That's been amazing for me to watch as you've put out fires here, fires there, fires here, with so much work and so much effort. So that's my 2 cents, but thank you. It's been amazing to watch.
Thank you. It is, for our guests, it is my pleasure to serve as the president of the League of Cities and Towns this year, so it's given me a heightened engagement in the league these past several years, and sitting at that interface of state and city. Bountiful does have a great tradition of punching above its weight in this regard. Our city manager represented the City Managers Association for several years on the board's executive committee. And so that has made Gary a very trusted resource, which is why we often then get to insert our data into policy discussions because of that expertise. Our former colleague, Councilwoman Beth Child, now UTA Commissioner, or not Child, sorry, Holbrook, other Beth. She also served as president of the League of Cities and Towns. We've had other past mayors, so we've definitely have a tradition in Bountiful of being engaged. I firmly believe that if we don't engage, then shame on us. The legislature is going to do its work and do its and move bills and policies forward. And if we want to make sure that they are thoughtful about the connection of city and state and thoughtful about the impact on our residents, then it's up to us to engage and to be there. So, any other questions? We have tried to stall for Senator Weiler, who has said he has left the Capitol. So we hope he's somewhere between the state capitol and Bountiful. But any other questions on bills?
I did have a question. This one doesn't really relate to cities, but all of us as individuals. It was on House Bill 286 about protecting children from AI harm. Can you give us an update on that one?
I haven't spent a bunch of time on that one specifically. I can tell you it's an overall theme of the legislature to be examining AI policy in general. And so there's been some bills in that way. There's also a bill to do a tax on entities that are probably entities that look and feel like Facebook or TikTok or entities like that. And then to drive those into various programs aimed at youth. There's legislation on what's called a bell-to-bell ban on cell phones in schools, so advancing the policies that they considered last year to make sure that kids are focused on schoolwork. So there's definitely, the legislature often has kind of areas of themes, and protection for young people in that technology space has definitely been a theme this year. Okay, if we have no other questions, then we will take a brief 10-minute, oh, there is Senator Weiler. We will just welcome him to the podium. He can just keep walking straight in. Senator Weiler, we've been giving a little legislative update while we were waiting for you to join us. We alerted everyone
Still in committee. I think Representative Cutler is hoping for my vote, so we'll see how that goes.
Which bill?
I don't know. I don't know the number. But it's
We can
Senate
distract you
Judiciary.
or not distract you. Senator, we'll just give you some time to talk to us about what you're running this session. I will just let you know, we've talked a little bit about land use bills, we've talked a little about homelessness, we've talked a little bit about UTA, so.
So I'll tell you what I'm not running. I'm not running any eighth of an acre lot bills. So, plus,
Thank you.
I'm not running any bills that I think directly affect cities and towns. And I usually don't. I served on a city council for 4 years, and I do believe that the best legislators are the ones that got trained on the city level. I do try to respect that separation of powers. I'm not going to say I'm perfect at that. I do think there are some issues that are best decided by the federal government. There are some issues that are best decided by the state government. But I think as a general rule, the more local, the better. So, and again, I'm sure if Kate or the mayor or anybody wanted to, they could say, well, you voted for this 5 years ago, and probably guilty as charged. But that is a principle that I try to abide by. I have 30 bill files. I think one has been held in committee, and I've abandoned about 3 of them. So I'm not going to tell you too much about my bills. I'm trying to think of, I don't know, Mayor, do you have one of mine that you want to talk about?
Well, I do have one that is currently circled on the Senate board that I know we were very interested in,
Which one's that?
SB 211.
Okay, that's not my bill. You asked me about my
It
bills.
isn't your bill.
So let me tell you about SB
This one we are
211.
interested in.
Because I'm getting texts from city council people about that. So SB 211, I know, so there was a decision by the Supreme Court of Utah last October called Gardner versus Norman, and it completely and unexpectedly altered the status quo in personal injury lawsuits, and it benefits primarily insurance companies. And I don't think the cities were part of that litigation. I don't think they were expecting that result, but the cities kind of got a tail end benefit on liability from that as well. As I understand Senate Bill 211, the intent is to restore the status quo that existed 4 months ago before the Gardner decision. And so if you're going to tell me that if Senate Bill 211 passes, the sky is going to fall, I'm going to say, well, why didn't it fall last year or the year before or the year before? because this was really an unexpected windfall primarily for insurance companies who are turning record profits last year without this bill. And then the cities have some ancillary benefits from it as well. There's also, I think, competing bill, Senate Bill 280, that would, I think, even go further in favor of insurance companies. And I don't know what's going to happen. I have been voting to try to restore the status quo that existed before. I think this was a huge policy change that was basically granted to the lawyers for insurance companies, who are not always fair and not always nice in treating people who were injured in accidents that were no fault of their own. I think policy decisions are best left to the legislature. So that's kind of where I'm at on 211. I don't see that as a direct city bill, because it's primarily a fight between plaintiffs, lawyers, and insurance companies. But I do understand that if Gardner remains unchanged, it is a slight benefit to the cities. So that's what I have to say about that.
Any comments or thoughts you want to share from our city attorney perspective of related to SB 211?
I mean, I read the briefs. I didn't see one from the League of Cities and Towns or any city attorneys. It was not that kind of case. So,
Not specifically. I mean, it's tort litigation. I'm not sure it was completely settled case law 3 years ago for my litigation, which is why I believe the Supreme Court took the case, but nothing really from the city.
Okay. One of the other bills, I know we talked about it a bit with the youth council, and we have some of our youth council that were out in the hallway. Would you like to share any thoughts about your religious curriculum in schools bill?
yeah, so religion should not be taught in schools. There should be no evangelizing. There should be no recruiting or anything like that. What my bill does is it will allow statements made by Abraham Lincoln to his cabinet that he felt like God wanted him to free the slaves. It would allow, when history is being taught, it will allow teachers to teach the entire history and not feel like they're handcuffed and can't say something that's true because maybe they'll get in trouble. There's a reason the Pilgrims came to America. There's a reason the pioneers crossed the plain. There's a reason why George Washington did many of the things he did and talked so frequently about providence, which is how he referred to deity. And my bill only clarifies that when history of our nation and of our state is being taught, that teachers don't have to steer clear from some of the faith or religious motivations of historical figures. That is not to say that any teacher should be evangelizing or shaming anyone who's an atheist, but I think, and it was interesting because Senator Reeby, who is a school teacher, spoke against my bill and said, there's nothing preventing teachers from doing that right now. Great, then my bill's not changing anything. But I do think we're in a weird space in our culture where people are no longer sure what they can say and what they can't say, especially in the classroom. And I want to put up some guardrails and say, this is a safe space. Especially if a student asks a question, I don't want teachers to feel like, gosh, I want to answer that question, but I can't because I don't want to get reported to the principal. So that's what that bill does.
Thank you. I was just looking at your list of other bills that are filed. Is there any others that you want to highlight that are coming up, or any others that you think that maybe they're not even your bills that you're sponsoring that are
So
on
last
your
year,
radar?
we passed, two quick bills. They're both education related since we have youth city council members here. Last year, we said no cell phones in the classroom. I think that was a tremendous change in the right direction. This year, we're passing a bell-to-bell ban, which means that your students won't be able to go to their locker, between classes and at lunchtime and check their phones. I know some parents are worried about that. They can still go to the office and call home, or go to the office and get permission to use their cell phone. But the data is just irrefutable. Cell phones are a huge distraction for me, and I'm just as addicted to mine as anybody is. But when these kids are learning how to read and to write and to arithmetic, you know, I think that we know from the data that this is a distraction that they don't need. And, and so that bill is progressing, and I think that will be the policy. Now, the thing I love about that bill, and I wish we did this more with cities, is every one of our 39 school districts, they have the right to overturn that. So what we are passing as a default policy, and we're respecting local control. So if any school board says, we do want the kids to be able to check their phones at their lockers or even in the classroom, they can vote to overturn that. So I really like that piece of the bill. It'd be harder for me to vote for that despite the data if we didn't preserve that local control. Today, the Senate passed a bill from Senator Milner, and this is her last session. She's a former Weber State University president, that will basically authorize schools to hold kids back in 3rd grade if they're not reading at level. And what the data shows is if we progress kids down to 4th grade who can't read, they will fall further behind every year. And they will graduate 3 or 4 grade levels behind. The intent of this bill is not to hold kids back. The intent of this bill is to help parents and teachers and principals and everyone focus to make sure that by 3rd grade these kids are reading. That's the goal. Now, will some kids get held back? Probably. But what we really need in this state, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd get more parents reading to their kids when they're young. And hopefully, you know, if in 1st grade the parents are being told if your child doesn't catch up, they're going to be held back in 3rd grade, that's going to solicit an increased response from the family. I personally, my older brother, was held back in 2nd grade. That really scarred him. He still talks about it. He's 60 years old. So I don't want any kid held back. But on the other hand, my little sister, my parents bribed me when I was in 5th grade. I wanted to go on this train trip overnight to Detroit. I grew up in Chicago. And they said, if you will teach your little sister how to read, you can go on the train trip. And I did, and she reads. And I went on the train trip, and it was fabulous. So first trip, you know, of my life without my parents, it was really fun. So I really have personal experience on both sides of this. Anyway, those are the 2 bills I want to tell you about.
Well, thank you so much. We've reached the end of our work
Thank you.
session. I appreciate that you rushed from the state capitol at a busy time to
Yeah,
try
and I'm going to rush
do
right
this.
back. So, but I didn't want to leave you hanging. And if you have your phones out, let me give you my cell phone if you don't have it, because the best way to contact me is to text me, 801-599-9823. You can also just Google Todd Weiler cell phone, and it's my only cell phone, so it's all over the internet, unfortunately. I do get calls at 2 a.m. sometime, and that's my fault. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much
All
for
right,
joining
thanks.
us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, we will take just a brief break from our work session to reset for our council meeting.